So today's lesson is from March 30th. It's about mid-segments of triangles. And the objective is I can solve problems involving mid-segments of triangles. So you might ask yourself the question, what is a mid-segment of a triangle in the first place? And all that is, it's a line segment that connects the midpoints of two of the sides of a triangle. And I wrote it down for you right here. I said a line segment whose endpoints are actually the midpoints of two of the sides of a triangle. And you could see it in words, but I think a picture would be much, much easier to comprehend. So I'm going to draw just any old triangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is the midpoint. That's the midpoint. And you show it's a midpoint by the markings. Because by definition of midpoint, those two segments are congruent to each other. You know that's a midpoint because these two segments are congruent. How do you know the segments are congruent? Because they have the same number of tick marks. If I connect the midpoints, that becomes a mid-segment. Now, two things happen when you have a mid-segment. And these two things are what drives the concept that you're going to need to know for this lesson. Okay, so I'm going to write concept. When I write the word concept, that just means you're going to need to know this in order to solve the problems you're going to face. One concept is this. The midsegment not only does the midsegment connect the midpoints of the sides, but the midsegment is also parallel. The midsegment is parallel. And you remember the symbol for parallel is the equal sign that goes up and down. The midsegment is parallel to the third side. You know, the side that is not touching. So I'm going to indicate parallel by putting an arrow and an arrow. And when they have the same number of arrows, that means they're parallel. That's one concept. That's one thing you need to know. And not only that, and I'm going to put a star by this one, concept number 2. It gets a star because it's so important. The midsegment okay, I'll say it in words first, then I'll write it down. The midsegment is half the length of the parallel side. This midsegment is half the length of the parallel side, the side that it's parallel to. Like, for example, if I told you this side right here, the side of the triangle, suppose I said the side of that triangle is 50, say 50 inches. Then this midsegment, obviously it's shorter, but it is exactly half as short, so it's, guess what? 25 inches. And that's the relationship you're going to have to know. So I showed you in the diagram. I'm going to show you in words. The midsegment is half the length of its parallel side. So that's what you're going to be facing. Now, to make this more concise, this is the worksheet that the assignment came from. So make sure you put your name on there. The date, and this is from 3/6/2015. 30, 26. The topic is midsegments of triangles, and this is period 3. Okay, so it says a midsegment of a triangle is a segment connecting the, we already mentioned that, midpoints of two sides of the triangle. An example of a midsegment from this diagram would be line segment DE. Notice point D and point E are both the midpoints of that triangle ABC. So the example would be line segment DE. Okay, cool. Now, it says if a segment joins the midpoints of two sides of a triangle, then the segment is parallel to the third side and half as long. So, to show that in the diagram, this midsegment is parallel to the third side and is half as long. So, for example, if I said this was 20 from here to here, what do you think the midsegment is going to be? Well, if it's half as long, it's only going to be 10. There you go. To put that in symbols, you would say the distance from point D to point E equals half the distance from point A to point C. Here it is. The distance from point D to E is half the distance from point A to C. Not only that, but we could also say that the distance from A to C, as you can see the side, AC, is twice as long as the distance from D to E. And that right there, that's your concept. That's what we build the problems on. So I go over here. I'll work out a couple problems for you, and that'll be the end. It says, identify all pairs of parallel segments. Well, I'll do number 1, then you could do number 2. All 3 of these are midsegments. So I'll start with midsegment XY, which is right here. So we could say line segment XY is parallel. Now just think. Line segment XY, it touches line QR, and the other endpoint's on line RS. Line segment XY, which is right here, does not touch QS. So I got news for you. XY is in fact parallel to QS. So line segment XY is parallel to line segment QS. Let's try this line segment WY. So line segment WY, right here, it touches this side and this side, but WY does not touch QR. So it's parallel to line segment QR. Think about it. This midsegment and that side, they're parallel. And finally, we didn't look at midsegment XW. And XW is touching this left side, it's touching the bottom, but it's not touching the right side. So therefore, XW is parallel to line segment RS. So that means you could do number 2. The next one I want to look at is number 3 with you, just for examples. In number 3, it says if L, M, N are the midpoints of the sides of triangle PQR, it says PR is 46. So what I'm going to ask you to do is label PR is 46. Simple. That means the distance from P to R is 46. There we go. That's a 4. Now, think about this. There's three pieces of information we could generate. And I'm hoping you could generate information. Like, for example, you know that all of these are midpoints. So if N is the midpoint of PR, then that means if this is the midpoint, then that means that this segment is congruent to this segment. Definition midpoint. So if the whole entire length PR is 46, then what if we took 46 and divided by 2? Guess what? That necessarily means that this segment is 23 and this segment is 23. Definition of midpoint. Because after all, 23 plus 23 is 46. Now comes time for the midsegment. The midsegment is always half the length of the side. The length of the side is always twice the midsegment, so the midsegment must be, I'm talking about the midsegment that's parallel to side PR. This must be 23 as well. Just generating information. Let's go to the next given information. They're telling you that the distance from P to Q is 40. That means from right here to right here is 40. And because L is the midpoint, now I labeled it, now I'm generating information. I'm making information, creating information. Based on definition of midpoint, this segment PL has to be 20. And that segment LQ has to be 20. Yay. And so does its mid segment that it's parallel to. So guess what NM is? It is definitely 20 also. And finally, the third piece of information they give you. They're telling you that LN is 17. Oh, they're giving you the midsegment. It's right here. It's 17. They're telling you that this midsegment is 17. Well, guess what? If this midsegment's 17, and that midsegment's parallel to QR, then guess what the distance from Q to R is? Well, since the side parallel to the midsegment is twice the midsegment, if that's 17, then that whole distance has to be 34 from Q all the way to R. Because the side is twice its parallel midsegment. Oh, and by the way, M is the midpoint, so guess what? QM is 17, and so is MR. 17. That's about all the information we could generate. And that's enough to answer the questions. What's the distance from L to M? Well, from L to M is 23. I'm just taking that straight off the diagram. From M to N. Well, here's M to N. That's 20. Q to R, that's the whole distance. That's 34. And M to R, that's 17. Done. Having said that, I'm going to do one last one, and the rest is up to you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to choose number 6. I'm choosing number 6 because it's kind of complexity level is the same as number 3, but the difficulty levels increase because now we have variables. But the solution to this problem right here is based on the fact that the side of the triangle equals 2 times the midsegment that it's parallel to. There we go. If you could rememorize that, rememorize. That means remember and recall at the same time. You're set. The side, this is the side, these are the sides, that's the midsegment. The side is exactly twice the midsegment. Because if you're solving for x, you know what I always say, you better have an equation to solve for x for in the first place. So what is the side? It's 19x. I think that's a minus sign, not sure. Let me put on my glasses. Okay. 19x minus 36. That side, 19x minus 36, doesn't equal 6x plus 31, but it equals twice that length of 6x plus 31. Yay. And now you could solve. When you solve an equation, you simplify both sides first. That's already simplified. You can't add 19x and 36 and minus 36. They're not like terms. Do what's inside the parentheses here. You cannot add those. They're not like terms. That has an x, that doesn't. But you could use the distributive property of multiplication. Think about it. You got a 2 right there. You got a parenthesis right there with nothing in between. That means multiply. So I drop down the 19x minus 36. Drop the equals. 2 times 6, 12x. 2 times 31, 62. Now you know to solve, I always remove the variable from the right side. See the equal sign? Look at the right side. You don't want an x there. So you minus 12x's, minus 12x's. Cancels. Now 19x's take away 12x's. That's just going to leave you with what? Drop the minus 36, drop the equals, drop the 62. At this point, we want to get rid of the constant from the left side, so why not just put plus 36 plus 36? And have at it. 7x is going to equal, I guess, a 98. And of course, the last step, divide by 7, divide by 7. That leaves you with x equals 14. Now, at this point, 14, that's what they're asking for, so you're literally done. On a test, though, they might say, what's the length of the midsegment, or what's the length of the side? At that point, that becomes a plug-in value. So if they ask you for this midsegment length, you would plug in the 14 right there where the x is. So that's the lesson. That's the concept. Look at number 5, because number 5 you're going to be required to do. And I'm just going to give you a hint for number 5. The side of the triangle equals 2 times its parallel midsegment. Just remember that. And what is the side? Is it the 7x or the 17 minus 18? The 17x minus 18. These are the sides. That's the midsegment because it connects the midpoints. You could see that mark, that mark. You could see those two. That is the midsegment. So if you wanted to set that up, what's the side length? And that equals twice the midsegment, and the midsegment is just 7x. Find the value of x. So, as an assignment, you're expected to do number 4, number 2, number 5, flip the paper over, and just do 3 and 5. I think that's fair. If you could do those, you could handle anything on the test that comes your way. So that's the end of the assignment, the lesson of midsegments of triangles. Good luck, And thanks for watching, and I wish you the best. Amen.